Welcome to the Real Estate Syndication Show. Whether you are a seasoned investor or building a new real estate business, this is the show for you. Whitney Sewell talks to top experts in the business. Our goal is to help you master real estate syndication. And now your host, Whitney Sewell.
This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today our guest is Mark Roderick. Thanks for being on the show, Mark.
Thank you very much for having me, Whitney.
Yeah, I'm excited to have Mark on the show. And Mark is a crowdfunding attorney who has represented entrepreneurs and their businesses successfully for more than 25 years. He represents companies across a wide range of industries, including the technology, real estate, and healthcare industries. He writes and lectures on the topics of raising money from investors, franchising laws, and business contracts. Mark, thank you again for being on the show, and I love having just experts, on the show that have just been in the industry for many years, and it's very valuable to the listeners and to myself. But tell the listeners a little more about your background and kind of what your focus is right now.
Well, I have represented entrepreneurs for a long time, as your brief introduction said. I always joke, it's only half a joke. I started practicing law in 1840. And so I've been representing entrepreneurs ever since. And, in all the stuff that entrepreneurs do, and one of the things entrepreneurs do a lot of is try to raise capital. Particularly, well, all entrepreneurs, but particularly real estate entrepreneurs. I always say that if you're speaking to a real estate guy and he's not looking for money, call 911 because he's probably not breathing. Because this is capitalism after all. Capital is the lifeblood of American business. So real estate in particular needs a lot of it, very capital intensive industry. So anyway, that's among lots of other stuff like buying and selling businesses. I have helped lots and lots of folks raise money over the last, since 1840. And that's why when the Jobs Act, which is what introduced crowdfunding, when the Jobs Act came on the horizon, I said, wow, this is transformative and disruptive and super cool. So that is going to be an exciting space. So these days, and about for the last 5 years or so, I spend all my time helping people raise money using one form of crowdfunding or another. And that basically means real estate syndication. And that, my friend, is the title of your show.
Well, I appreciate your time and you're laying that out because you are definitely an expert and somebody we want to talk to. So, as you and I discussed a little bit before the show, I'd like to talk about, because this is a big question in our industry. Every conference I go to, I get questions about this, of how, other people in the industry are doing this. But it's, how people raise capital for other syndicators and how they're compensated and how we do that legally. And so, I'd like for us to, there's tons of things we could talk about, but I'd love for us to just dive into that a little bit and some things we need to know as we're raising capital for other investors, how we do that legally and make sure they're doing it legally. But then when we become the operator, what that looks like as well.
Sure. And you were kind enough to, in our little pre-recording conversation, ask me whether you could ask that question. And I said absolutely, because it's an important question. It's a question that lots of clients ask me from both sides of the aisle, so to speak. And it's a super interesting question. I will warn you in advance that the answers are not very satisfactory, and you will understand what I mean. But the good news is that you and your listeners will know, at least at a high level, everything there is to know about the topic once I'm finished talking for the next few minutes. It's not going to leave you with a warm, satisfied feeling, and you'll see what I mean by this. So the first thing I'll do is tell you and your listeners. So I maintain this blog, and on my blog I write stuff about legal issues, trying to answer questions that my clients ask. So that question gets asked a lot. And not too long ago, within the last 6 months, I wrote a blog post on this topic called something like using finders in crowdfunding. And so if anyone wants more information, they could look at that blog post, which is necessarily, because it's written and well thought out, it's going to be perhaps more detailed and have more information than you're about to hear me speak. But anyway, I will do my best. So, raising money for people and being paid for it. So the first part of the issue, can you raise money for other people? The answer is absolutely. Do your darndest. It's the second part that is legally difficult. How do you get paid? So let's just have a basic hypothetical. Let's say one of your buddies is raising $2 million to buy some multifamily project, and you know a few investors and who might contribute, 500 of it. And you say to him, listen, I'm happy to bring these folks into the deal. Obviously, I want to be compensated for it in some ways. Okay, so this is the legal issue around that arrangement. The legal issue is broker-dealers. So in the securities laws, in particular under the Exchange Act of 1934, anybody who is acting as a broker or a dealer has to be registered as such with the SEC. And being registered as a broker-dealer is a big deal. It's not a little deal, it's a big deal. And of course, there are broker-dealers out there, but it's a expensive, time-consuming process to get licensed as a broker-dealer. The reason that's relevant is that when you are helping your friend raise money, so when your friend is raising money from these investors, right, he's selling securities. Everyone in the syndication business understands that from a technical legal perspective, your friend is selling securities to people. And the definition of a broker in Section 15 of the Securities and Exchange Act is anybody who deals with securities for the account of another as part of a business. Okay, and of course, who are you thinking of? You're thinking of Morgan Stanley and other folks like that. But if you are compensated, even in that little transaction, by your friend for raising money to bring him investors, you are, or at least maybe, acting as a broker. And if you are acting as a broker without being licensed as a broker, well, it's just like, more commonplace. There are people called real estate brokers. You go out and sell your house, they get a 6% commission. And if you just open your shingle one day and say, hey, I'll help you buy and sell houses, pay me a 6% commission, and you're not licensed as a real estate broker, you get in trouble. Well, the same is true, but at a higher level for acting as a securities broker without being licensed. And so if that happens, if you are acting as a broker, whether from ignorance or just because, gosh darn it, I want to do this no matter what the law says, there are two possible consequences. One, which is what everyone thinks about, is very unlikely to happen, and that is the SEC knocks on your door and sends you to jail or does something to you. It's very unlikely to happen because the SEC has the SEC probably has to devote most of its manpower these days to Elon Musk alone. So the SEC has very limited manpower. It's probably not coming after Whitney Sewell on the basis of a $2 million real estate transaction. So that is one thing that could happen, but is unlikely to happen. The thing that is more likely to happen is this. You bring your friends in, your buddy pays you, let's say he pays you a 5% commission for bringing in this $500,000. You take away $25,000, perfect. The deal goes south. One of those investors, who didn't need to be one of your guys, but any of the investors in the deal, gets wind of what happens and happens to have a brother-in-law who is at a cocktail party one day and speaks with someone like me and describes the situation. And I say, well, that's interesting because, you know, if they used an unlicensed broker in that transaction, then that was an illegal offering, and everybody has the right to get their money back. And the brother-in-law's ears perk up. And before you know it, someone's filing a lawsuit against you, the unlicensed broker, and your buddy, the guy who used an unlicensed broker. And everyone is really unhappy, and you're very sorry you took that $25,000. So that is, in a big picture, what the law is and what can go wrong. Now, unless you want me to shut up for a few minutes, I will then go to the next level.
No, let's go. Let's go.
Let's go. Okay. So the reason, the primary reason that all this is very unsatisfying is that these transactions, as you personally know, and as everyone in the real estate industry know, these transactions happen all the time. They happen every day. Lots of private real estate deals are funded in this way with compensation going back and forth, and nothing ever happens. It is a funny and unsatisfying situation that the SEC knows this is going on. It every now and again announces, to no particular purpose, that it knows it's going on and doesn't like it, and shakes its finger like this and says, there will be dire consequences if you continue to do this, but it doesn't do anything. It doesn't bring any enforcement actions. And so the industry just toils on with all these finders out there taking commissions and lawyers like me pontificating, you can't do that, and nothing happens. The shoe never drops. So it can be very frustrating. It's certainly frustrating for me. I mean, I hear from people all the time. You know, my client will be approached by somebody, by an unlicensed person. They'll say, hey, we got $1 million, pay us 5%. I say, are you a broker? They say, what's that? I say, well, you know, you're supposed to be a broker. And they say, and I'm sure they're telling the truth, Mark, we've been doing this like this for 25 years, and you're the first person who's ever raised this question with us. And that's very frustrating for my client when I'm whispering my client's ear, you can't do this. And the client's looking around and saying, well, everybody does this. Okay, so it's unsatisfying for that reason. Now let me move to the next level. It is possible in some situations to construct an arrangement that is legal. And let me give you two examples of arrangements that are legal. The first, a promote. In general, and I hope the lawyers listening to your show don't jump up and down and scream, but in general, because this is a very gray area, you could take a promote for bringing people into the deal. Okay, so let's say your buddy is taking a 30% promote, typical promote. And he says to you, listen, if you bring in $500,000, I will give you 5% of my promote, you know, something like whatever it is, 5%, 10%. In general, and don't ask me really to explain why, because I couldn't, because there is no why, is that would probably be okay. A promote on the one hand is okay. Immediate cash commission on the other hand is not okay. Okay, so that's one pretty legal thing you can do. The other thing you can do is there are such things as a legal finder's agreement. So for example, if you've never done this before, okay, you're not in this business, this is not how you make your income generally, but you're talking to your buddy, he says, I have this multifamily thing, do you know anybody? And you say, you know what? I do know somebody. I went to college with so-and-so, you know, and he's made $1 trillion selling some pharmaceutical company or something like that, I'll introduce you to him. Just introduce you. And if he makes an investment, you pay me. If that is done properly, and your role is limited to a kind of one-time introduction, you don't try to sell the deal, you don't make an investor presentation to your buddies, you're just making it an introduction. That arrangement can be legal. So those are two things that can be legal.
Does the legal finder's agreement, I mean, is that something we should have in writing before they refer somebody to you or a potential investor to you?
Yes. That if you're going to try to do it through a legal finder's agreement, that should be in writing. It should limit the activities that you're going to conduct. You're not going to conduct any selling activities. You're not going to go out and find investors. You are going to say, well, I went to college with this guy, I will introduce you. And if indeed he ends up making an investment, you'll pay me some money. And so that can be legal. So there are a couple ways that you can do it legally. There are a lot more ways that you can do it illegally. And unfortunately, the SEC just sort of allows this all to happen while making clear that it thinks that it's all illegal. So in other areas, in other related areas, for example, in small merger and acquisition transactions, you had the same situation, a lot of finders out there introducing companies to one another in the hopes that A would buy B and pay the finder a commission. Exact same issue. And the SEC, after years of study, came out with a new rule that makes it clear that in some limited situations, you can have unlicensed brokers in the M&A field. And so we keep hoping and waiting that the SEC will come out with similar rules for the unlicensed finders in small real estate transactions. It would make everyone's life much easier, but just hasn't happened yet. So I hope I have thoroughly confused everyone to your satisfaction.
No, it's good. It's good stuff. Are you tired of answering emails from investors about when they'll receive their K-1s? Let the real estate CPA handle the accounting and taxes on your next syndication, and they'll file your tax returns by March 15th so you can get your K-1s to your investors by the individual filing deadline on April 15th. Not only will this reduce headaches, but it will help you retain investors over the long term by improving investor experience. The Real Estate CPA is now offering a special virtual workshop to the listeners of the Real Estate Syndication Show on how to answer tax-related questions from your investors. Learn more today by visiting therealestateCPA.com/syndication. And, so I guess as far as being the GP in a deal, the general partnership side, we're going to raise capital. If there's somebody that can raise capital, and then instead of saying, okay, we're going to pay you, to raise capital for us, which we understand, now that you've clarified, we can't do or word it like that anyway. But if we bring them on the general partnership side, they have other duties, other things like that. Is it questionable at all then?
Well, again, I mean, it depends on how real those other duties are. From that perspective, giving them a promote, allowing to share in the GP's promote is probably going to be acceptable. Paying a commission is probably not going to be acceptable. And as the scenario you sort of refer to, I've seen a lot of agreements where people make up stuff, make up reasons why we're paying this commission. They say, oh, well, you're going to be in charge of, sending postage or sending letters to the investors, and you're going to have to talk with them, and sort of making up these reasons why we are paying 6% of the raise. I there's a saying in law that is true in a lot of fields, which is pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. I don't know if you've ever heard that saying, but in my opinion, there is such thing as being too cute with these finders agreements. When people look at these things, whether it's a government lawyer working for the SEC or a plaintiff's lawyer from that cocktail party, when you look at a piece of paper and it just jumps off the page, we are trying to hide something because it's so silly. It is listing all these duties of the finder that and I know and everyone knows they just didn't do, and we wouldn't have paid them for it if they did do it. All these silly things. What that's telling the reader is, hey, these guys knew this was illegal. They're just trying to cover it up. And so, I don't like to do that. Honesty really is the best policy.
Yep, I agree. So planning to do the promote or a legal finder's agreement ahead of time is going to be the best way.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And so, and then you had briefly mentioned this, and I thought we could talk about this a little bit more before we run out of time. But as far as paying, it's still kind of a finder's fee, but like a referral fee of some kind, or is that going to be a specific amount, or can we say per what this person invests, or what can that look like? Somebody that wants to invest, but they also help bring other investors to your deal, or they just tell their friends about it. Then all of a sudden, let's say I didn't even say anything to them about a finder's fee or doing an agreement or anything. However, they tell their buddy about it. Now, buddy A wants to invest in the deal as well. Can I pay, the first investor, or give him, pay him something to encourage him to keep doing that, of course, but to, just say thank you.
To say thank you.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So the first part of your question, if you have a legitimate finder's agreement, again, that scenario I said, because you just happen to go to college with a guy who's really wealthy now, you can be paid an outright commission. If the finder's agreement is otherwise legal, it will say that if your college buddy makes an investment, you get whatever, X percent of the amount he invests. So that's a flat out commission, and that is legal if it's in an otherwise legal finder's agreement. Now you're sort of saying, well, what if a lot of people want that deal? What if that investor also has some friends? And you're just going to have to evaluate each of those arrangements separately, bearing in mind that pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered.
Yeah, and I guess he didn't even know that I've paid anybody else to refer people, or that we could even do a legal finder's agreement. However, he just told his buddy at the club, or while they're golfing, that, hey, yeah, this is what I'm investing in. So he says, well, I want to know about it, and so, yeah, I just want to, if I want to pay him some money, I don't know, just to thank him.
Well, the way business works, there's a lot of things are legal. For example, if you're a real estate developer and your buddy's a real estate developer and you just share investors sometimes and it works out for both of you, that's perfectly legitimate. If someone does something really nice for you and for some reason, I don't know where are you from?
Virginia.
Physically? Okay, I went to law school. So if someone just happens to give you tickets to the Final Four, in which the Virginia Cavaliers are a Final Four team, or he and his wife take you and your wife out to dinner and then to see the Final Four game, those things are done, and no one's gonna blink. Again, there are lawyers out in your audience saying, oh, that's wrong if you do that too much. But in general, that's okay. But once you start paying cash compensation for investors, you are back in this stew.
Hmm. It's good to know. Okay. No, that's good. It's good to know. Mark, unfortunately we're about out of time, but
Okay.
anything else, as far as relating around this topic that I should be asking you about that maybe you get questions about that I haven't asked you?
Well, I will say this, that there are two groups of people who are allowed to get paid, right? One is actual brokers. I mean, there are folks out there, actual brokerage houses, and a syndicator seeking to raise money can legally pay a licensed broker commissions, flat out commissions for raising money for a real estate investment. And then the other group, not so obvious, that gets paid is investment advisors. Now, there are more and more investment advisors coming into the real estate syndication and crowdfunding space. Investment advisors, this is the key, however, investment advisors are not paid by the syndicator. They're not paid by the deal maker. They're not paid by you. They're paid by their clients. So you do sometimes see legal arrangements where, for example, a syndicator, your guy raising money for that multifamily deal, he'll have two classes of shares, one for regular people, and then another for, like, with a minimum investment of $250,000 or something. And those will be sold through investment advisors only. And they will be sold at a discount because of the volume, the larger minimum. And the idea is that the investment advisor will then perfectly appropriately charge his or her client for bringing the deal to them. So there's enough money there for the investment advisor to be paid legally. And that's perfectly appropriate.
Interesting. No, that's awesome. Thank you for bringing that out. I wanted to ask you, what's the number one thing that's contributed to your success?
Oh boy, I have to tell you, in my career was kind of turned out, with the benefit of hindsight, to be made for crowdfunding. That's really one important aspect. And I think you talk to a lot of people, and it's kind of being in the right place at the right time, having the right skill set for a place where the economy happens to go. I've certainly seen that many times myself. But second, I think it's so cool, and I can't it's a cliche that if you really enjoy what you do, you're probably pretty good at it, because it doesn't feel like work. And I'm not going to say nothing I do feels like work, but when you find something that you enjoy, it is amazing how it's a virtuous cycle. So I would say, yeah, doing something that I enjoy, which is crowdfunding, with all of its philosophical and economic components, has contributed a lot.
Nice. And is there a way that you've improved your business recently that we could all apply to ours?
Well, you are already doing it, I would say. I mean, since I began practicing law in 1840, there were no such thing as podcasts or blogs or et cetera, et cetera. So it's been an adjustment for me to adapt to the brave new world that we all live in, the brave new world of social media. You're doing it here. You're a host. So, but you're a young guy. So what's going to happen is, surprising though it may seem, in a fairly near time, you will need to evolve also. The stuff that is so new and cool today will be superseded by something else. So I think always learning. And again, that's a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason.
And how do you like to give back?
I give back in part by doing podcasts like this. I do a lot of public speaking. I do a huge amount of writing on my blog. That blog is used by so many people. It's an educational tool. And so I am super into the crowdfunding. I think it's about democratization of capital and a rejuvenation of the American capitalist system. And the more people I can educate about it, not just syndicators like you, but investors, probably some people in your, well, probably everyone in your audience is a potential investor, the benefits, that this is great, not just from the syndicator's point of view, but from the investor's point of view. The more I can get that message out, I get calls from all over the world from people, and I will spend time on the phone and with people from all over the world who read my blog, have questions, and I definitely try to give back, and I think it's effective in spreading the news.
So, Mark, tell the listeners how they can learn more about you, your business, and also this blog.
Okay, I keep mentioning the blog. So the URL of the blog is crowdfund, and then still part of the same word, attny.com. Obviously an abbreviation for attorney. Crowdfundattny.com. All my contact information is there. If you don't have a pen right now and you just type into Google Mark Roderick crowdfunding, you will come across me 100 times. So it's once you start doing the research, it's kind of hard to avoid me. That's what people tell me.
So you are getting out there. You are growing. You're getting out on social media a lot, it sounds, since what, 1840?
Oh yeah, it's incredible. So, social media is right. It's old news to your listeners, but it's incredibly powerful.
Very.
We've learned that social media is a powerful force for good and for not good.
That's right.
But it is a powerful. It is a powerful tool, educational tool. The big picture social question is why, with so much good information so freely available, why is our society so unbelievably unknowledgeable about so many things, from American history to vaccinations to everything else? It's a conundrum. I don't have a solution for that, but I do post truthful content on my crowdfunding blog.
Great. Mark, you've been just a great guest. I really appreciate the extremely valuable content that you provided today, and also letting us know about your blog and how we can pay people legally to raise capital or not. So, Mark, thank you so much. Thank you again for your time, and I'd love to have you back on the show again, sometime. But I hope the listeners will visit Mark's blog and also go to Life Bridge Capital and connect with me. I'd love to have a call with you as well. And then go to Real Estate Syndication Show on Facebook, so we can all learn this business and grow together, grow our businesses together from experts like Mark. So thanks again, Mark, and we'll talk to each of you tomorrow.
Thanks for having me, Whitney. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Syndication Show, brought to you by Life Bridge Capital. Life Bridge Capital works with investors nationwide to invest in real estate, while also donating 50% of its profits to assist parents who are committing to adoption. Life Bridge Capital, making a difference, one investor and one child at a time. Connect online at www.lifebridgecapital.com for free material and videos to further your success.